No one ever told me that motherhood was a grieving process. Hey, it's Heather Chauvin, wife, mother of 3 boys, former social worker, dreamer, recovering rescuer, stage 4 cancer survivor. I started my motherhood journey when I was 18. I was single and living off government assistance. Beyond all of these titles and labels, I'm a human being, just like you, attempting to navigate it all while feeling good. My goal on this podcast is to show you that you can live an energized, sustainable life both at home and in your work. On this show, I attempt to keep it real with stories, interviews, and random thoughts. This is not a business or career podcast, and it's not a parenting podcast. It's both and so much more. You will laugh, you will cry, and maybe even get a little frustrated with the truth you've been hiding from yourself. I believe all human behavior is a language, whether it's through your child's behavior, your health, or a relationship. And when we learn to listen instead of react, we begin to understand what it truly means to feel alive and in control. If you haven't already, go grab a copy of my book, Dying to Be a Good Mother. You can purchase it wherever books are sold online. And if you're interested in how to integrate this work into your life and get quicker results, you can learn more about my mastery and mastery business coaching experiences at heatherchauvin.com/work with me. Heather Chauvin, CHAUVIN.com/work with me. And you have a personal question or a topic you'd like me to answer on this podcast, then text me 313-710-5199. 313-710-5199. All right, let's change your life. Let's dig in. Hey, I'm back. And today I'm really excited and not so excited to talk about this process, which is motherhood and grief. And I always like to be a detective in my life, have challenges and experiments with myself. But I also think one of the benefits of doing this work with women is you get to see behind the scenes of what is really going on. And when we as humans give ourselves permission to actually feel our feelings, culturally, traditionally, we're taught not to feel, right? Feelings are bad, shove them down. But when you give yourself permission to feel your feelings, you're giving other people permission to feel their feelings, like your children, partners, people around you, and they don't scare you. So anger doesn't scare you as much. Sadness doesn't scare you as much. But more importantly, on a deeper level, what I've noticed is that part of what we are resisting and why we don't want to implement certain things, we say we feel guilty, but is it guilt or is it grief? So let me give you an example. I was helping a client the other day inside of my mastery program, and she said, okay, in June, I want to focus on our bedtime routine. Like, it has gotten way out of whack, and I'm not getting enough sleep, which is, bleeding into every other aspect of my life. And so I said, awesome, let's go for it. Like, let's make a plan, follow through with the plan, and I'm going to hold space for you, but, you're going to check in with me every day. You're going to let me know how it went, and we're going to make magic happen. And so, we think we don't have time. We think we don't have the energy. We think our partner won't let us. We think we don't have the money. We think all of these things because that's like the story that we're telling ourselves. But when we start implementing, and this is where I tell people, I'm like, you don't need to go in the past and dig for like why you do what you do. Create a vision for yourself. Go after what you want, and the barrier that you had will just show up. Like it's legit going to be there, right? It will pop up. So while I was talking to this client, we had the plan. She came up with the plan, how she was going to implement this bedtime routine. And she's like, oh, that part is going to be very uncomfortable for me. right? She said, oh, that's actually going to be really hard for me. I said, is it going to be hard or emotionally uncomfortable? Because if you've been following me, you know that I don't believe in the word hard. Because again, I feel like that's culturally, we've been like, this is hard, which is to me emotionally uncomfortable. It's not hard to get your shoes on and go for a walk. It could just be emotionally uncomfortable, right? You have to push through the resistance. So she's like, yes, that part is going to be very emotionally uncomfortable. And I said, why? Like, what happens? And she's like, I'm very uncomfortable with my children feeling their feelings, right? Because they feel their feelings and then I feel bad because I want to rescue them. I'm like, okay, well, how's that serving you, right? She's like, it's not. I'm at my wit's ends. I'm ready to surrender. I really need to solve this problem because even though in the moment I feel like I'm rescuing them, I'm not, because I'm not getting enough sleep. And then throughout the day, I'm reacting and I'm yelling, right? Also, not to mention the health benefits of sleep. Like if you literally want to balance your hormones and you want to feel like mentally stable, physical, emotional, spiritual, like you need enough sleep. Like that's the basics 101, like sleep and water. So she's like, oh, that's going to be where I need support. That's going to be the coaching. I'm like, awesome. That's what I'm here for, right? That's why you hire mentorship. So we get to this point and I was like, but let's dive deeper. Like what's the story you're telling yourself? Like what really happens there? And it reminded me of like something I've experienced, and I definitely know I'm not alone. But she's like, how many years do I have where I can crawl back in bed with my kids? Like how many years? Like the years go by so quickly and then we feel it, right? We feel that fleeting feeling. And when they're little, we think we have time. Like we think we have time and then they grow up. And I'm experiencing this in my own life with my kids. They're 16, 11, and 8. And yes, my children are older and people judge and be like, oh, but your kids are older. And I'm like, yeah. So we still have sleep issues. And I know personally that part of our sleep issues are because I resist consistency and routine in certain aspects because I know that these moments are temporary, right? So if I dive deeper and deeper and deeper, the reason why I'm personally not consistent is because I am grieving the loss of my children's childhood. Because I know that there's this like identity attached to who am I if I'm not a mother, right? Who am I if I'm not a mother? And if I've identified as a mother since I was 18 years old, who is Heather without nurturing others? And so I get it. I totally get it. There's no perfection here. This is the human experience. This is like, but we got to lean into it because right now my pain around bedtime is not that bad, right? It's just like, ooh, it's a little itch. It's not a big gaping wound. So it's not a big pain point for me right now. But it was at one point, and I know exactly why it was a huge pain point for me, because I was refusing to feel the sadness that I was experiencing around my children growing up or around me feeling not good enough or whatever it is. So when I was talking to this client about that, she's like, damn, this is hard. And I was like, but that's the brave zone, right? That's the messy middle that you get to jump into and know that when you're changing the bedtime routine, everything else falls into place. But this is personal development. This is the courageous rewrite. This is the inner leadership. Because when you're changing this, it's going to change every other aspect of your life because it's all connected. So it's never about the thing that you think it's about. And grief is wildly uncomfortable, and it could be so freaking beautiful. So beautiful. I had a friend, she posted this on Instagram the other day, and her dog died. And she was actually like posting the whole journey. And her dog was like 12 years old and just died suddenly, like in his sleep on, the kitchen floor. And it was just very sudden. And she is this like very what I would perceive as like a strong, quote unquote, traditionally strong woman. And she was crying and she's like, oh my God, I just gotta like take off a few meetings for today. And I'm like, you're going to be out for like the whole day. But she's like, nope, I got it together. And she's holding it together. And I'm watching, because she made a commitment to herself to like show the good, the bad, and the ugly of a journey that she's going through on Instagram. And just watching the unfolding and the cracking open from the loss of this dog, because it represented so much more than just the dog, right? It was like her son's going off to college, and so the dog's dying and her son's going off to college at the same time. And it was like, it's like painful after painful after painful after painful. And I'm watching the surrender happen, right? I'm watching the layers come off. I'm watching the surrender of like, I feel weak for having tears. I feel weak for having emotion. And I started crying just by watching her Instagram stories, because I can relate to it. And I'm like, I feel that coming for me. I feel that wave of grief coming for just, endings of stages in your children's childhood, and endings of like your own relationships with other people, relationships with yourself. Heck, I've even noticed it with COVID, how fucked up that is. But we're not at where I live, we're not quote unquote coming out of it, but you can feel it coming. I feel like we're past the messy middle, and it's definitely going to be like a new journey, like second chapter of this fucked up time. But I was like, oh my God, like the last year and a little bit has been like not easy and horrific and sad to watch, but I can see the gratitude in that. And then I think about all the additional time that I've had with my children, and I'm like, did I live for the moment, right? And so I have all these thoughts too. There's no right or wrong. And I just think about all the additional time I've had and how grateful I am for that time, but also how that's coming to an end. And there's grief, like grief and joy, like go hand in hand. You have to experience grief in order to feel the gratitude. And I feel like life in general will give that to you, but there's something special and unique about mothering and motherhood that does that to you. And the more I talk to women, the more I realize I don't believe that guilt is really what we're feeling. I feel like guilt might be a secondary emotion, and maybe somebody knows about this and I'm just discovering it now, because they say anger is a secondary emotion. That's like the mask is anger. And then you take off the anger and there's sadness underneath there. And then underneath the sadness is like you're grieving, right? You're grieving the loss of your old self. You're grieving, parents that are still alive that maybe you feel very disconnected to. You're grieving a relationship that's ending. You're grieving a very sacred time in your life. And I think we use anger because we don't want to feel. And that's our go-to emotion. And then I feel guilt is the same thing. I feel guilt is us trying to use a socially acceptable response of, oh, I feel guilty. I feel guilty. But in reality, are we just refusing to grieve? So my challenge for you today, my lesson, aha moment is everything comes to an end. Everything. Life, the day, relationships, everything comes to an end. And if we avoid even starting because we're afraid of losing something, you're going to be stuck. Like, simple answer. So you get to choose stuck or you get to choose grief. And then in the middle is joy, and you get to choose joy. And everything is temporary. The grief is temporary. The joy is temporary. And that's how you get to live for the moment, because you just know that it's going to pass. And so some days you're like, damn, I can't wait till this day is over and it passes. And some days you're going to be like, this moment is fleeting. And that's why when we're watching people sleep, we're like, oh, you're so precious. And then we secretly be like, oh, don't wake up. Anywho, once you acknowledge that motherhood has a grieving side, you dive into grief and you get to feel joy. That's it. As always, I want to know what you think. Aha moments. 313-710-5199. Let's start a conversation. Well, that's it. And I wanted to thank you for listening today because I truly believe you are exactly where you need to be. And now I have a favor to ask. In exchange for the value you've gained from this free podcast, I'd be forever grateful if you would leave us a review on iTunes. Share the show with at least one woman in your life who you feel would benefit, and or take a screenshot and share it on social media. And always feel free to tag me at Heather Chauvin. The world does not benefit from your guilt and fatigue. The world needs more women who are willing to unlearn everything they've been taught. Women who are courageous enough to feel good and not let guilt run the show. I believe you are that courageous woman. To see if my community and coaching is the right fit for you and your big vision, the relationships you desire, the money, time, energy that you know deep down you are capable of creating, then head on over to heatherchauvin.com/work with me. That's Heather Chauvin, CHAUVIN.com/work with me, and take the next step in the right direction. Taking a stand for how you feel means you are taking a stand for how your children show up as adults. And if you have a personal question or topic you'd like me to answer on the podcast, text me 313-710-5199. 313-710-5199. You are so worthy of feeling good. Now go do some scary shit.